to this edition of News Today, a series in which we discuss and briefly analyze the important news of the day. Let's have a look at today's main headlines. The Supreme Court protected women's right of parenthood and struck down the 2023 amendment to surrogacy regulation rules of 2022. Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan recently hosted 22nd SCO Council of Heads of Government. The Department of Consumer Affairs, in collaboration with IIT BHU, has launched Dark Patterns Buster Hackathon 2023, a symposium on production of improved and traditional seed through cooperative sector was recently organized by Bharatiya Beej Sahakari Samiti Limited. A report titled Interconnected Disaster Risk Report 2023 was recently released. The direct taxes data shows robust growth in the gross total income of individuals and a widening tax base. Starting with our first news, the Supreme Court has protected women's right of parenthood and struck down the 2023 amendment to surrogacy regulation rules of 2022. Surrogacy is a practice where one woman bears and gives birth to a child for an intending couple. It is regulated by the Surrogacy Regulation Act of 2021 in India. Before moving on to the main news, let's first briefly discuss the key provisions of the Act. The Act allows only altruistic surrogacy and penalizes commercial surrogacy. The Act also prescribes conditions for intending couple and surrogate mother. The intending couple must be legally married and must not have a surviving child. And the surrogate mother must be a married woman having a child of her own and must be between the ages of 25 to 35 years. Further, a National Assisted Reproductive Technology and Surrogacy Board was created under the Act to review and monitor the implementation of the Act and supervise the functioning of the state boards. Now coming back to the news, the Supreme Court's decision came in a case in which a woman suffering from MRKH syndrome had challenged the 2023 amendment to the Act. The amendment mandated that both male and female gamete must come from the intending couple. The provision was challenged as the petitioner woman has absent ovaries and uterus. As a result, she cannot donate her own eggs for surrogacy. The center has responded that the use of donor eggs was exempted because the process of surrogacy cannot be availed under the law unless the child was genetically related to the intending couple. Finally, the Supreme Court in its decision held that the expression genetically related to the intending couple has to be read as being related to the husband when Rule 14A applies. The Rule 14A specifically recognizes the absence of a uterus or any allied condition as a medical indication necessitating gestational surrogacy. Also, the court noted that the law permitting gestational surrogacy was women-centric, and the decision to have a surrogate child was entirely based on the women's inability to become a mother.
Moving to the next news. Recently, the 22nd Shanghai Cooperation Organization Council of Heads of Government meeting was held in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. During the meeting, India's External Affairs Minister Shri S. Jaishankar called the members to strictly adhere to principles of international law and respect each other's sovereignty. Now let us know in detail some essential facts about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO. The organization was established in 2001 in Shanghai by the Shanghai Five countries along with Uzbekistan. The Shanghai Five countries included Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and Tajikistan. The SCO, as the organization is popularly called, is a permanent intergovernmental organization guided by the Shanghai spirit that is based on the virtues like mutual trust and benefit, equality, and respect for diversity of civilizations. Presently, it has 9 members that include India, Iran, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Among its observer states are countries like Afghanistan, Belarus, and Mongolia. The addition of Belarus as a member state is in process. Well, the key objective of SCO is to ensure and maintain peace, security, and stability in the Central Asia and the neighboring region. And the highest decision-making body is the Heads of State Council that meets on an annual basis. Its secretariat is located in Beijing, and the Regional Anti-Terrorist Structure, or RATS, a permanent organ of the SCO which aims to counter terrorism, is located in Tashkent. So far, it has only two official languages, Russian and Chinese. Now, the significance of SCO lies in the fact that it contributes to 30% of the global GDP and 40% of the world's population. It makes constant effort in tackling separatism, extremism, and terrorism. And most importantly, it strengthens India's outreach to Central Asia and ensures multipolarity in Eurasia.
Moving on, the Department of Consumer Affairs, in collaboration with IIT BHU, has launched the Dark Patterns Buster Hackathon 2023. So let's first discuss what exactly are dark patterns. Dark patterns are practices adopted by online platforms which mislead people into paying for items or services which they did not intend to do originally. It is considered an unfair trade practice. Now let's look at some examples of such practices. Recurring payments in software as a service billing is a type of dark pattern. It exploits positive accusation loops to collect funds from users. Another example is when advertisers or sellers create false urgency by describing a sale as an exclusive sale for a limited time. Basket sneaking is also a type of dark pattern in which travel insurance is automatically added when a user purchases a flight ticket. Other common examples of dark patterns include confirm shaming, forced action, subscription trap, drip pricing, and nagging. Coming back to the news, the hackathon aims to design and prototype innovative apps or software that can detect dark patterns on e-commerce platforms. It may include development of browser extensions, add-ons, mobile applications, among other things. Earlier, the Government of India had issued draft guidelines on prevention and regulation of dark patterns 2023 under the Consumer Protection Act of 2019. These guidelines are applicable on all platforms systematically offering goods and services in India and on advertisers as well as sellers.
Recently, a symposium on production of improved and traditional seed through cooperative sector was organized by the Bharatiya Beej Sahkari Samiti Limited, or the BBSSL. BBSSL is a cooperative society established in 2023 under Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act 2002. The main aim of the body is to ensure that traditional, certified and scientifically prepared seeds reach every farmer. As the name is very suggestive, traditional seeds are those seeds which are naturally grown in indigenous regions, ideally suited for quality and nutritional excellence in local environments. Now, let us shed some light on the seed production system in India. In India, we adhere to limited generation system for seed multiplication in a phased manner. In this system, there are 3 generations: breeder seeds, foundation seeds, and certified seeds. Breeder seed is the progeny of nucleus seed of a variety and is produced by the originating breeder or by a sponsored breeder. Foundation seed is the progeny of the breeder seed and is required to be produced from breeder seed, which can be clearly traced to a breeder seed. Lastly, the certified seed is the progeny of foundation seed produced by registered seed growers under supervision of seed certification agencies. Now, what are the benefits of seed certification? Well, seed certification leads to enhancement in seed replacement rate, or the SRR, which is a measure of cropped area covered with quality seed. Seed certification also preserves the genetic identity and genetic purity of seeds. Additionally, it will also help in promoting the Indian varieties for exports, taking into consideration the fact that India's share in the world seed export is only 0.6%. The Indian government has taken several measures to improve the quality of seeds in India. We have already 2 important legislations in place in the shape of the Seeds Act 1966 for regulating the quality of certain seeds and the protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001, which aims to protect the intellectual property rights of plant breeders. Apart from that, India has also a national seed policy to support the seed industry. And there are two important schemes, the Seed Village program and a sub-mission for seed and planting material.
In another news, a report titled Interconnected Disaster Risk Report 2023 was recently released. The report was released by the United Nations University Institute for Environment and Human Security. The UNUEHS, established in the year 2003, is an academic arm of the United Nations which acts as a global think tank. Its main mission is to carry out research on risks and adaptation related to environmental hazards and global change. Coming back to the report, it states that the world is fast approaching risk tipping points on multiple fronts. So what are risk tipping points? A risk tipping point is defined in the report as a moment when a socio-ecological system loses its ability to buffer risk, leading to increased potential for catastrophic impacts. An important thing to note is that this concept is different from climate tipping points, which are specific thresholds after which unstoppable changes occur, influencing global climate. Now, as per the report, there are 6 interconnected risk tipping points. First being the accelerating extinctions that trigger chain reaction to ecosystem collapse. The second is depletion of groundwater that drains water, risking food supply. Third, the melting of mountain glaciers. Fourth is space debris causing loss of multiple satellites. Fifth, the unbearable heat making it hard to live in some areas. And finally, the uninsurable future when rising risks make homes unaffordable. Talking about the drivers of these risk tipping points, the human-induced greenhouse gas emissions, insufficient risk management and cooperation, the pressures associated with rising global demand and inequality of development and livelihood opportunities are considered to be the root causes. So what can be done to avoid or mitigate the consequences? The report recommends solutions in the form of following action points. Avoid, which targets root causes and drivers of risk to avoid risk tipping points altogether. Adapt, which help prepare or better address the negative impacts of risk tipping points. Delay, to slow down the progression toward risk tipping points. And transform, which involves overhauling of a system.
Recently, the Central Board of Direct Taxes or CBDT has released data related to direct taxes in India. According to the data from CBDT for the assessment year 2013-14 to 2021-22, returns filed by individual taxpayers increased to 6.37 crore, which is a staggering 90% increase in these 8 years. In the same time period, the average gross total income for individual taxpayers increased to about Rs 7 lakh, which is a 56% increase, which means there has been a robust growth in gross total income of individuals and a widening tax base. There has been an increase of 42% in the average gross total income for the top 1% individual taxpayers, while for the bottom 25% individual taxpayers, the increase is 58%. The proportionate contribution of the gross total income of top 1% of the individual taxpayers has decreased from 15.9% to 14.6%. For the bottom 25% of the individual taxpayers, it has increased from 8.3% to 8.4%. While for the middle 74%, it has increased from 75.8% to 77%. The term tax base is a commonly used term in economics, which refers to the total amount of income, property, assets, consumption, transactions, or other economic activity subject to taxation by a tax authority. Now, what is the significance of this widening tax base? Well, it improves government's ability to fund social and physical infrastructure. It also increases the possibility of lowering tax rates and cesses imposed. Additionally, it helps in the better planning and budgeting of a fiscal year. A few other measures can also be taken to increase the tax base, like the promotion of voluntary compliances, easier filings, following up with potential non-filers. The place in the news today is Qatar, the capital of which is Doha. Recently, a court in Qatar sentenced 8 former personnel of the Indian Navy to death. Well, Qatar is a country in the West Asia, also called the Middle East, which shares land boundaries solely with Saudi Arabia and is surrounded by the Persian Gulf. Let's very briefly discuss the important geographical features of Qatar. Qatar is situated on the west coast of the Persian Gulf and on the Qatar Peninsula. It has one of the world's largest reserves of petroleum and natural gas. Sand dunes and salt flats called sabkhas are its chief topographical features. Surprisingly, there are no permanent bodies of fresh water in Qatar. And lastly, a hill called the Abu al-Bal is its highest point.
As we conclude today's main news, let's go through some quick updates. Under the Ayurveda for One Health campaign, farmers are being sensitized about special techniques used in the cultivation of medicinal plants through the National Medicinal Plants Board. The board was set up in the year 2000 to promote the medicinal plant sector and is working as a section of the Ministry of Ayush. RBI has directed credit information companies or CICs to introduce a compensation framework for delays in updating or rectification of credit information of borrowers. CICs maintain credit information of borrowers which can be accessed by banks and other lenders. The Indian Oil Corporation Limited has launched India's first gasoline and diesel reference fuel. Reference fuels are premium high-value products used for calibration and testing of vehicles. Annamalai Tiger Reserve is carved out of the Tamil Nadu portion of the Annamalais and lies south of the Palakkad Gap in the Western Ghats. Some areas of the reserve are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Gir indigenous cow breed is being promoted under the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. Gir is a hardy adaptable breed with high milk yield which originated in Gir forests in Gujarat. 124 schools were recently inaugurated in Haryana under the PM Schools for Rising India or PM Shri scheme. PM Shri scheme is a centrally sponsored scheme under the Ministry of Education launched in 2022. Osteoporosis is a bone disease that causes a loss of bone density which increases the risk of fractures. It develops when bone mineral density and bone mass decreases or when the structure and strength of bone changes. Vajramushti Kalaga is a form of wrestling different from conventional grappling and entails two jetties or fighters. Wrestlers in this form of wrestling use Vajramushti, which are knuckle dusters adorned with diamonds. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.